Today on New England Living, we're heading up to the southern Maine coast to visit the world's first and largest electric railway museum in Kennebunkport. And we'll check out a gorgeous oceanfront hotel with one-of-a-kind views of York's iconic Nubble Lighthouse. Plus, Thistle and Leek's Kate Smith cooks up her signature paella. It all starts right now on New England Living. New England is full of adventure. I can't believe you guys are letting me do this. Up and away.
Look at that. Oh, you just did your first takeoff.
Join me as we discover the people and places that make us so unique.
This is it. You can't find it anywhere else in North America.
I mean, does it get any better than this? Love the place you call home with New England Living. Thanks for joining us today on New England Living. I'm your host, Rachel Holt. Coming up, we're heading to Kennebunkport, Maine to check out the Seashore Trolley Museum with restoration shop foreman Brian Tenaglia. There are hundreds of transit vehicles here at the Seashore Trolley Museum. Give us an idea of what we can find in the collection here.
So we have cars ranging from the very beginning of the trolley era, the late 1890s, even a little bit earlier than that, up through modern rapid transit vehicles that were built in the late 1970s. We cover pretty much the entire evolution of the transit industry, including buses, trackless trolleys, as well as the streetcars and rapid transit trains.
Where are you sourcing all these cars from?
Oh, we find them everywhere. In the early days, so back in the late 1940s, early 1950s, a lot of these cars were still in service. As time went on, these older cars in particular became more and more scarce. You'd end up finding them in places like houses or dentists' offices or stores, things like that. So we have several cars here that came as just bodies, no wheels, trucks, mechanical equipment underneath. All of that was restored over decades by volunteers.
Your specialty is working in the restoration shop. How long is it taking to restore one of these to its original glory?
It can take decades. We have a car out running today that took about 45 years to restore. Usually it takes about a decade. Nothing really happens quickly with restoration, but it's not supposed to. You're supposed to take your time, do things authentically, and restore these things to be representative of what they were when they were in service.
What goes into the restoration process? Because I know there's research, I know there's sourcing the different parts, and of course there's the actual work on the car.
It really takes a village to restore a trolley. There's a whole bunch of different disciplines and skills that go into working on these things. I'm primarily a mechanic, so I work on the mechanical equipment underneath. We have people that work in our shop that are master level woodworkers, and then everything in between, painting, refinishing the seats. As you mentioned, a lot of research, finding parts, trading with other museums to get the parts that you need. It's important to do the restorations authentically because it gives people that time capsule. These were designed by people with drafting tables and slide rules. No calculators, no computers, nothing like that. They still work 120 years later. Having that historical authenticity fosters an appreciation for history in people. It takes people back to a different point in their life, or maybe even a point in time that they themselves never experienced.
A lot of the people that work here are volunteers. How much do you rely on the community to keep this place going and into what it is today?
We would never be able to do what we do without our volunteers. We have over 450 active volunteers that help us everything from maintaining the track, building new track, maintaining the overhead wires, helping us out in the shop, helping with events. The passion for what we do here is what drives everybody.
What are some of the most impressive trains that you have here in this collection?
In terms of things that people usually find really striking, our Montreal Tramways observation car with the stadium seats. We have several double-deck cars from the United Kingdom and larger equipment from Pennsylvania that can do relatively high speed, 75, 80 miles an hour.
One of the highlights is hopping on one of the working trolleys and getting a train ride. What does that experience offer to guests?
So we have 1.5 miles worth of track, goes up through the woods. We give some historical interpretation, talk about what the trolley meant to people. So it's kind of like stepping back in time. It's a little bit more than just a train ride, I like to think.
And you can actually be the one driving one of these?
If you're lucky enough.
Okay, I'm excited for this part. But anyone can do this if they come to the museum.
Yeah, it's actually an opportunity that we do offer to the general public. You can be a motorman, and we'll teach you how to operate one of these cars and let you actually take it up the line.
And with that, it was my turn to hop aboard a vintage Connecticut car company trolley with volunteer operator Eric Engler. This particular trolley is from the early 1900s. Where did it used to run? Give us a sense of what it used to do back in the day.
So this trolley was built in 1906, and it pulled passengers until the late 1930s in and around New Haven, Connecticut. It spent about another 10 years as a salt car because the trolley companies would have been salting some of the roads that they ran on before it eventually came to our museum in the 1950s.
That's pretty fun that a lot of these trains are from different cities around the US, but also from around the world. And when you're on here, you can kind of sit down and picture what it might have been used for.
There's not really a better way to experience what this might have been like than to sit on here and look. They're really, really fascinating windows into what life was like in those places during that period.
What are some of the details that we can find on this trolley that gives it the feel of someone going back in time over 100 years ago?
There are a lot of things that you see in a trolley like this that you wouldn't see at a modern transit vehicle. These seats are a great example. They're made out of a material called rattan. We've also got vintage ads all along this car that are period accurate. Even just looking at the ceiling, we've got incandescent light bulbs, these bare incandescent light bulbs that will provide a nice warm light. They'll flicker once in a while, kind of give you that old-timey trolley feel.
At the museum here, part of what you do is you teach people like myself how to operate one of these trolleys, and it looks to be a little more involved than just pressing a pedal.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. These cars, this car in particular was built in 1906. It's well over 100 years old, and they're very simple mechanically, at least compared to modern transit vehicles. But that does mean that you have to do a little bit more of the work yourself. It's kind of like riding a bike. Once you get the feel for it, you just kind of get a sense for it. First thing we need to do is wait for 2 bells from our conductor. That will tell us to go. You answer by hitting 2 bells with your foot. Great. So, first we're going to release the brakes, and then you're going to take 1 point of power on the controller. So, release, all the way to the left, take a point. There we go, hold that. Another point.
Oh, we're cruising now.
And shut off, all the way left. So now ring the bell a couple times as we go through the crossing. You're doing it, you're driving the trolley.
We're driving the trolley. And how fast will this get up to?
Right here, this is as fast as we're gonna go. We could do between about 10 and 15 miles an hour. If we were to run the other half of this controller up, we could probably get up to 25 or so.
You don't really stop working here.
No, you are active all the time with this sort of thing. Now, this station platform here is where we're gonna stop. So, shut off. The conductor gave us 1 bell. You need to answer with 1 bell. There we go.
That's my favorite part.
Keep rolling, so get the brake handle ready. Let's put it in the middle position.
Middle this way.
Hold it there.
Okay.
Okay, great. And to stop the car, move it to the right and back to the center.
That wasn't bad for my first
Yeah,
stop.
good job.
Yeah, we lurched a little bit, but
Yeah, we got there.
For you and others who work at this museum, why is it important to preserve this piece of American history?
In so many ways, the transit and the rail story is the story of America. The railroads built the country as they expanded west, and the trolley systems were responsible for the birth of the American commute. They were the first means that people had of living in one area and working in another, whether that meant adjacent rural towns or different neighborhoods and cities. This is something we talk about, is how deeply intertwined the entire country's history is with the development of its transit networks.
Coming up after the break, our journey through the southern Maine coast continues with a visit to a modern cliffside hotel boasting one of New England's most spectacular views. When we return after this. Welcome back to New England Living. I'm Rachel Holt. Up next, we're in York, Maine to check out the newly redesigned Viewpoint Hotel with owner Joseph Lipton. How much did this view of Nubble Lighthouse factor into the decisions when it came to the design here?
Well, the name of the hotel is Viewpoint. It's all built around the view here. And when we thought about expanding the property, what we wanted to make sure was that we would never block the view from the existing building. So that view played a huge part in our design of this structure.
You were really careful to pay attention to the history of this property before you came in here. How are you paying attention to that and what you do today?
So years ago, I was on the Historic District Commission in the town of York. And being somebody that grew up here, had kids here, and lived in this town for as long as I did, I want to make sure that I'm preserving what was here before and also enhancing, not gentrifying, but enhancing the main experience. So years ago in the 1950s, there was a place called the Cabana Colony here. There were these little one-story structures with flat roofs that had big glass viewing of the lighthouse. So when we decided to do this project, we wanted to somewhat incorporate that into this and bring back that history and pay some homage to that. So we built 7 units, glass fronts, flat glass roofs, overlooking the lighthouse.
One of the newer additions to this property are the suites that are built into the hillside here. What was that process like of creating this?
You know, it was a long process, about 4 years total in the making. The most important part about building this was building it within the hillside, making it be part of nature, the concrete building kind of blending in with the rocks of the coast, the glass doors just opening up and just giving you this beautiful vista. We wanted to create something really, really special. And looking back on it now, it's exceeded even my expectations, and I feel great about it. And we wanted to be green about it. I think we're standing on the first green roof in southern Maine in a commercial building. I think it's the only one for a hotel. Our passive design, the energy efficiency of the rooms, those were all really important to us too.
How was that view of Nubble Lighthouse a focal point when you were designing the rooms?
We were very fortunate that we had a program where we can go into a 3D model and walk around the structure as we were designing it, even so that when we put mirrors within the design, we can see what the reflection was going to be like. So we started realizing that if we put the mirror here, it's going to reflect the lighthouse. So while somebody's brushing their teeth, they can see the lighthouse. The reflection of the glass doors, you see the lighthouse. The reflection of the glass wall going into the bathroom, you see the lighthouse. So really the whole focal point is right there.
You're not escaping the view, no matter what way you turn.
You're not escaping the view.
You paid attention to every single detail, especially when it came to choosing the products that went in here. Walk us through what that process was like.
When we designed the building, we knew we were going to do a concrete structure with grass roofs. And then the next thing that we really needed to pick was, how are we going to connect the outside to the inside? Because with the grass roof and the concrete rocks, we were trying to build the structure into nature. And we wanted to seamlessly have a way for our guest experience to be outside and inside and not see that divide. And we went down to Seven Tide down in Boston, which is the Marvin Design experience, where we picked out the sliders that gave us this view.
And working together with Joe to help bring this vision to life was architect and designer Chris Reynolds. Nubble Lighthouse is one of the most visited tourist attractions in the entire state of Maine, and guests here have this incredible view of it. How did this factor into the decisions when it came to the windows and doors chosen for the suites?
The views were absolutely critical, and when you open the door to each unit, the first thing that you're hit with is an abundance of light and open views right to the lighthouse and the ocean. When we were looking into the different manufacturers for these openings, we arrived at the Marvin Elevate sliding patio door because it met all of the requirements that we had for the site, from providing the largest opening at the highest value, but also having quality of construction that could be maintained in the rugged environment of the coastal sea air. One of the components of making the selection is ensuring that that light doesn't create too much heat gain in the room. So the UV resistance of the windows was a critical factor in ensuring that we're not wasting energy by letting heat out and or in.
Sustainability was top of mind when it came to the design here. And you got to tell me about this roof, because I saw someone mowing the lawn on the roof, which is something you don't see every day.
Yeah, the roofs here are incredible. Whenever you approach a project like this in such a special site, you're making an incision on the earth. You're literally putting a scar on the earth, and in some ways, as architects and designers, we're obligated to make sure that we replace it. So we thought that it was amazing that we could actually have a 4,500 square foot footprint. Then from the sky, it's all been replaced with green features and lawns.
This structure is obviously very unique. How does it relate to the local architecture in this area?
One of the many special parts about this project was that I, as a kid, grew up actually playing in the summers in lots of Civil War and World War II forts that dot the coast of Maine. So to get to actually accomplish a design using concrete and using actually the camouflage methods that they would use during World War II was just pure magic.
You visited the Marvin Experience Center in Boston during the design process. How did that help when it came to choosing the products that you did?
You know, it was absolutely critical to getting the client and ownership comfortable with the products. Being able to actually see and touch and feel the products is so essential, especially in our digital world where so many selections are actually only happening online and people aren't fully confident with those selections until they touch it. So that was a critical part of kind of the door and window selection process. Quality was a critical component to everything that the owner wanted. So when we were selecting fixtures, lights, flooring materials, tiles, everything had to be the best. So when we went to select our window and door package, it also had to achieve those standards.
When guests go to their rooms after a long day, what experience are you hoping they come away with?
So you get to this building, you walk into the room, and that wow moment of, it's me, it's the ocean, it's the lighthouse, and these epic views. We wanted to capture that kind of singular nature of you and the elements.
Coming up after the break, we're cooking paella on the outdoor grill with rising chef Kate Smith when New England Living returns after this. Welcome back to New England Living. Up next, a local chef with an international influence, Chef Kate Smith fires up the grill for her signature paella dish made easy. After completing her undergraduate degree at Boston University, Chef Kate Smith spent time working at some of the Northeast's most renowned kitchens. Now, alongside her husband, she runs Thistle and Leek in Newton Center, a modern gastropub with a menu of local, seasonally driven small plates inspired by her travels through Europe. We're here at the Clark Sub-Zero and Wolf showroom, and I am joined by Chef Kate Smith of the restaurant Thistle and Leek. And Kate, you are not making your average dogs and burgers for us today on the grill. You are making something a little more elevated. What are you cooking for us?
We are cooking paella. It's one of my favorites to grill. It's a really quick cleanup, one pan. It's always impressive.
And this may seem like an intimidating dish to make at home, but you promise us this is something easy to make?
Once you learn the technique, anyone can do this.
Okay, we're liking the sound of that. What's the first step of this dish?
Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is get the chicken wings on the grill to start getting that nice char that's gonna add a lot of flavor. That's the sound we wanna hear. Okay, I'm adding olive oil to the pan. I've got it on high heat. We want a nice hot oil to start. And then Spanish chorizo. Spanish chorizo is cured more like a salami than Mexican chorizo, which is a fresh sausage that's a little more crumbly. There's a real depth of flavor here.
About how long is the chicken staying on the grill for?
We're not trying to cook it fully, we're just trying to get a nice char on the outside. You want to make sure the grill is nice and hot. That's going to be the biggest thing to prevent things from sticking. Once you get it hot enough, turn it down to where you need it to cook the meat fully, and that solves most grill problems. For paella, it's the same. We get the grill nice and hot and we'll turn it down later. So I can see now the olive oil is hot. The oil is starting to come out of the chorizo, and that's what you want. I'm also keeping an eye to make sure it doesn't start smoking too much. Every step of this, we're building flavor.
Now, a lot of what you do is seasonally driven. So with these ingredients, how are you kind of rotating them with the seasons?
It's really in the vegetables that go on. Use whatever vegetables you have around. In this case, I'm using peas and artichokes, which are in season right now. Tomatoes, radishes, something like that you can put on raw. Otherwise, cook your vegetables ahead of time, but the sky is the limit. Any vegetable can go in this. At this point, the chorizo's rendered out. I'm adding the rice. I'm gonna give it a good stir. Just make sure the rice is nice and coated with that oil. Say about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of saffron. Stir that all up. And then I'm adding the sofrito. Sofrito is a mixture of onion, garlic, carrot, tomato. That's the good sound right there. Pimenton, and a little olive oil. I'm stirring this, making sure everything's incorporated. And then I'm adding the chicken stock. I've already warmed this up. You want the stock to be hot going in. And this is the last time you will stir this. Stirring will change the paella. You don't want to stir. I'm giving this a good shake to just make sure that the ingredients are evenly distributed. Bring it up to a boil, and then we'll turn the heat down once it's up. These chicken wings are nicely charred. I'm adding them into the paella and tucking them into the stock and the rice. They're effectively braised in the paella. I'm going to arrange the mussels, also tucking them in to the paella. These mussels will also release their juice as they're cooking and add to the flavor. You want to just see that nice simmer. I'm not going to stir, but I'm gently feeling the bottom to see if it's sticky yet. And once it's sticky, you know that crust is starting to form.
Okay, well, while that's cooking, I want to find out a little bit more about your background, because you do not have the traditional route to becoming a chef. You actually went to BU, but you studied something completely different. So how did you end up here?
Yeah, so I studied international relations and minored in Spanish. I ended up spending my last semester abroad in Madrid, which is where I first fell in love with Spanish food and Spanish cooking. And I came back home and just realized that I wanted to work in restaurants, I wanted to cook.
Growing up in New England, going to school here, working at a number of restaurants here, at the same time studying in Europe, how are you kind of merging those two influences in what you do now?
My husband and I have traveled extensively through Europe. I've lived in Europe, and every place has its terroir. It's so influenced by the place around it. And in New England, we have such amazing terroir. We have the seafood, the meat, the dairy, the vegetables. We have such an abundance of ingredients here to work with that we try to use those traditional European cooking traditions and incorporate all of the amazing bounty that New England has.
What do you love about paella so much?
It's so flavorful. It's fun to make. You kind of build the flavor in layers. It's an amazing way to use up whatever your favorite foods are or whatever you have laying around. It's really versatile. You can make it as fancy or as quick as you like. Without a huge amount of work, everyone is impressed when you put a paella in front of them.
What clues do we look for when we're finding out if it's ready?
So I've tasted the rice. The rice is done. The socarrat, that nice crunchy layer at the bottom, is formed. We're ready to go.
That's the answer I was hoping for. Let's get in there. And ideally, this should be resting for how long?
We're gonna let this rest about 5 minutes. It just lets that socarrat release from the bottom, and we wanna make sure we don't burn ourselves either.
This is a stunning looking dish. As far as garnishes go, what do you like to put on top?
Always olive oil. I have a delicious Spanish olive oil. I'm just drizzling over the top. Parsley. I put parsley on everything, but it adds a nice brightness that's a contrast to all of the rich flavors we've just added. And then some scallion. The green part adds a nice freshness. The white part adds just a tiny bit of spice. And then finally, I'm gonna arrange some lemons. You really want that bright hit of acid in there.
I almost hate to dig into something that looks so beautiful, but this is garnished and we're ready to go.
We're ready to go. So I'll serve you up a little bit of everything.
And you can really see that crunch on the rice that you were talking about.
Oh yeah, you want to scrape the bottom and make sure you get all that nice socarrat on each plate.
You can really see how the ingredients, and you can taste how the ingredients all come together. This is delicious. And for more food like this, make sure you visit Kate at This Own Leak. And for more cooking segments, check out our website, newenglandliving.tv. Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Wow.
Coming up next, we're heading back up to the Pine Tree State for a look at luxury camping, Maine style, when New England Living returns. Welcome back to the show. It's time now to go around New England with your New England Chevy dealer. We're visiting Terramor Outdoor Resort in Bar Harbor, Maine. Set in the woods outside of Acadia National Park, you'll get the feel of being surrounded by nature with all the luxury amenities you could want. With private in-suite bathrooms, Wi-Fi, heaters, private fire pits, this is not your typical camping site. Choose from 5 types of tents that can fit up to 5 guests. Even your furry friends. Yes, the resort is dog-friendly and even has a pup park on site. Other communal resources include a pool, hot tub, and an upscale lodge, where you can find food, local beers, and oysters. If you're hoping for more of an adventurous vacation, you'll have plenty of activities to choose from, including stargazing, hiking, kayaking, and biking. There's also a wellness tent for a more relaxing type of stay, where you can sign up for facials and massages. Thanks for joining us today on New England Living. For more on the show or anything you've seen here today, visit us at newenglandliving.tv and follow us on social media. I'm Rachel Holt. See you next time on New England Living.